All right, it is 6:01. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right, so we have a quorum. Any public comments?
No, sir, no one has signed up to speak.
Okay. Then we'll look at, just going right to, our consent agenda. Do we need to take any emotions or anything removed? All right, take a motion to approve.
I'll move that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
I second.
There's one person that still has not voted.
It might be me. See that? How many times?
There it went.
That was like
All right.
20 time I hit it.
Motion passes. On to item 4A.
Okay. Item 4A, this is an application for approval of a zoning change request from agriculture to heavy industrial to allow for a self-storage facility, case ZR 24009.
Good evening, P&Z Commission. My name's Robbie Highfield. I'm the Associate Planner for the City of Fate. And I'll be giving the staff presentation for project ZR 24009. It's five-star storage Fate. This also has SUP 24005. That's a separate vote, but it'll be the same presentation. So project description, this is a request to change two properties from agriculture to heavy industrial. Reason for the request is to construct a 3-story self-storage facility, approximately 41 feet tall at the highest point. Total square footage is 155,400 square feet. The reason the self-storage isn't permitted in agriculture, so a rezone's needed. Also, because buildings can't cross lot lines, should this get approved, they'll be replatting the two lots from two 1.5 acre lots to one 3 acre lot. Additionally, they're applying for a specific use permit. Reason for that is SUPs are required per table 4.1-1, the table of allowed uses in the Unified Development Ordinance. They're requesting 2 variances as well. These would be addressed on a Type 3 site plan that would require P&Z and City Council approval should the zoning and SUP get approved. So you wouldn't be voting on that today. We're just making you aware of the variances. Those would come back at a later date. Those variances would be a reduction of the minimum parking requirement for the use from 50 to 25 spaces in order to avoid floodplain encroachment, and a waiver of the first floor glazing requirements. They state that it's not compatible with the building design or intent. So here's the location off of Industrial Drive, south of the eastbound I-30 frontage road. You can see it highlighted in yellow there. Description of the property, like I mentioned, it's two 1.5-acre lots. They are both platted, but it would be replatted into a single 3-acre lot. Currently zoned ag, and to the north is Painter Solutions, Industrial Drive, and a vacant lot is to the east. MedTech Construction is to the south, and American Bobtail is to the west. So for the zoning, the approval criteria is, does the application meet the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans? Does it meet the character of the surrounding neighborhood? And are there any other factors required by Texas law and case law to consider? So for criterion A, the comprehensive plan for this area is Business and Innovation Center, and heavy industrial zoning is a representative zoning district in that place type. So criterion A is met. For B, the character of the surrounding neighborhood, all the surrounding not all of them. The surrounding parcels are either zoned general commercial or agriculture, and the surrounding uses would all be compatible with a self-storage facility, even though they aren't zoned what this would be zoned. Painter Solution is a wholesale retail paint shop. Medical, there's a medical contractor, that's MedTech. Boat repair and storage is going to be directly to the south. That's currently under construction. A resin distributor to their east. Truck sales to their west, and a transportation regional dispatch center to their north. So self-storage is compatible with all of those existing uses. So one of the new programs we have is ARC Urban. So to provide a idea of the scale of this building, also to consider that into character of the area, you're looking from the corner of Williamsburg right now, north. That's Industrial Drive you're seeing. So this is what it looks like currently, and this is what it would look like once the building's constructed. From a street view, right now you're looking south on Industrial Drive, about at the south corner of Painter Solutions. You can see Williamsburg neighborhood right down the street. You've got Texco Resin is on your left, and MedTech is to your right. Here's what it looks like when that building comes into play. And this just provides you a bit of a scale to a reference point. So staff does consider criteria be met. And there's no case law or Texas law to consider in this case, so criterion C is not applicable. For the SUP, the approval criteria is here. I'm not going to read them out, but I'll go through them as we go through the slides. The criterion A, does it meet the purpose of the zoning district in which it'll be located and all the criteria and regulations for that district? In our comp plan, industrial zoning, in the Unified Development Ordinance in Article 3, industrial is intended to provide and protect sites for higher impact industrial uses such as logistic and warehousing with a high traffic count, noise, manufacturing, high hazard uses, and raw material handling and storage. So and in table 4.1-1, that indicates that self-storage is a permissible use in Industrial Drive. So staff would consider that the purpose, that self-storage does meet the purpose of the zoning district. Criterion B, does it complement or is it compatible with the surrounding uses? And E, is it in scale with the existing neighborhood, or will it be considered to be in scale as it develops? So as I mentioned earlier, the surrounding uses are all compatible with self-storage. They're listed here. So staff considers criterion B and E to be met for the specific use purpose. C and F both have to do with traffic. So C is is it adequately mitigate traffic impacts? And F, does it mitigate any adverse impacts due to access, parking, service, and traffic onto adjoining properties? So a use like this isn't anticipated to draw a bunch of traffic. The minimum parking requirement would, their request for a variance is actually applicable here. They're requesting to go under the minimum parking based on, like I mentioned, the floodplain, but also what they expect their demand to be. And again, we're addressing that on a type 3 site plan. Staff considers both of these criteria met. So because there's a public hearing, we sent out public notice for both of these. You can see we sent them to 7 properties and surrounding 200 feet buffer. 7 were sent out. As of today at 10 a.m., we received no responses. After that, I have received none. We had none come in after that time. Same notice was sent out for the SUP. Same situation, no responses. So we do a fiscal analysis for every development that comes by. You can see the details in that screenshot, but important bullet points. The estimated taxable value is about $2.28 million. The year 1 contribution to the city would be about $4,500. Total proportionate cost to serve is just over $6,600. The annual net revenue is a loss of $2,100. When you factor in roads, that's a loss of $6,200. Across 40 years, that's a loss of just under 85,000, excuse me. With roads, that goes up to 248,000, loss of 248. The revenue to cost ratio is 0.7 to 1, where 1 to 1 is considered positive, or break even. And with roads, it's at 0.4 to 1. The private to public ratio is estimated to be 14 to 1 and take 37 years to repay. Do want to add in that the fiscal analysis is not a approval criteria for the zoning or SUP. It's simply a tool for us to, it's an educational tool so we understand the fiscal implications of the developments that come across our desks. With that said, staff's recommending approval for the zoning request, ZR 24009, and approval with conditions for the special use permit, SUP 24005. Those conditions for the SUP: 1, a type 3 site plan shall be required in lieu of the type 1 site plan for approval of the variances and waivers proposed. Excuse me. And 2, prior to the submission of the type 3 site plan, a replat to consolidate lots 2 and 3, Brown Industrial Subdivision, shall be submitted and approved. That's all I have. Since it's 2 action items, do we want to do questions for both of them at the same time? What's the most appropriate way to do that? So I can take questions now or after we do the public hearing part.
I just have one question, and it's more of a clarification point, which I'm looking at you, but I don't think you're going to be able to answer this. When looking at, I just want to make sure it's clear that as P&Z, we are not looking at the fiscal analysis as part of our approval criteria. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. Perfect, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, just to elaborate on just a moment, because this is, we don't see too many projects that actually have a negative fiscal outcome recently, And so it's important just to understand that citywide, we're trying to achieve a balance of projects that bring in kind of a higher productivity rate in those revenue to cost and public to private ratios. And then some that are just naturally going to have a lower productivity. When you have a big warehouse with no equipment, no sales tax generated on a relatively large lot, it's kind of natural that that's going to be a lower producing type of project from a city fiscal productivity standpoint. And so again, we don't see that if a project has a negative fiscal productivity, that it's automatically a bad project. It's just the nature of different types of development render certain levels of productivity for the city. So it's educational, it's contextual, but we intentionally omitted it from any of our approval criteria so that it doesn't, create, these conflicts with applicants and the city. We just want to be able to share with our community that we're looking at this. It's important for us to look at this. And so that's why Robbie included that in his presentation, so you guys understand that warehousing, while it provides an important service for the community, it has a certain fiscal impact, whereas other uses will have a different impact based on their sales or land use or land utilization, things like that. So thank you.
Which then turns me to another question, based on what your comments are. Do we have any other storage facilities in the city of Fate?
We do. They're all along the highway.
They're all along the highway?
One, two, and there's.
There's
one
Riding
off
Club, I knew
Riding
that.
Club. 1, 2, 3, 4, I want to say there are right now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Robbie?
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. All right, we don't have an application?
The applicant is here.
Oh, okay.
He says he doesn't have a presentation, but is available to answer questions should any members of the P&Z have any.
All right, so starting on this, you have any questions? Any questions, Karen?
I remember when the boat storage came, and that's also your business, is it not?
Brian, do you want to come up and introduce yourself and just make yourself available for questions, please?
I remember it coming before us on P&Z. I just haven't gone down Industrial Road or Drive since to even see, but that's gone well, I would assume?
I'm not sure. I don't represent that group. And I'm Brian Baca with Advantage Construction, and I represent the developer of the five-star storage. The only thing I did want to clarify, just to make sure, I noticed that the numbers that y'all were using are based on 2.5 million. I'm not sure.
That's the number that y'all provided us, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay, that's a mistake.
Good.
We can't build a building for $12 a square foot.
Yeah, yeah.
So the minimum cost on construction of that project is going to be about $10.5 million.
That's a big difference. Again,
Yeah,
we
so
only use numbers that the applicants provide us because we don't want to make assumptions.
No, that's perfectly acceptable. I understand that. I'll have to go back and see where that was, but it's over a $10 million project for the construction cost.
That would bump it when I did those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed kind of low to us, but again, we don't make stuff up, you know.
Well, when I saw that, it seemed very low to me.
Yeah.
Make the owner happy.
Yeah, right.
But
Maybe change your bid a little bit, right?
that's right. Yeah, I'll have to change my markup on it. You also had another question about the number of storage facilities. This storage facility is really not going after any of the groups that are already renting in those other 4 facilities. Those are non-climate drive-up units, and this facility is going to be going for the climate-controlled interior storage predominantly. And so the idea here is it's a multi-story Class A facility right there at your gateway, really kind of bringing something additional to that business and industrial park and on that side of I-30 for Fate.
I did have one more question.
Sure.
But it might be more for the owner themselves, but often when we've dealt with our other storage unit owners, there's ancillary businesses like trucks, like renting U-Haul trucks. Is there anything like that likely to happen down the road? Because no one seems concerned about the parking.
Yes, there's not any way for me to know what's going to happen down the road. currently, the way that we're anticipating this designing out, there won't be enough parking or enough room for trucks or trailers, any kind of rental business.
It didn't look like it.
Yeah,
but
it's a
nice
pretty
looking-
tight site, and, you know, some of these storage owners do the ancillary businesses with that, like the rentals, but this is not designed for that. We would have to have quite a bit more parking area for rentals.
And my last question is, do you know approximately how many employees will need to park in those parking spaces?
1 to 2.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, this facility will be operated electronically, so every single door will have an electronic lock that you'll operate from your cell phone, multiple cameras throughout the entire facility, and so it doesn't take as much to manage a facility that large when it has the additional security.
Jeff? All right, thank you. So it is 6:22. We'll open the public hearing.
And to be clear, we'll do the public hearing for the zoning request and then a separate public hearing for the SUP, just to follow protocol.
And I assume we have no one to speak?
No, no, sir.
Okay.
We've received no applications to speak at all tonight.
All right.
Yes, sir. Sorry
So-
about that.
No, that's all right. So at 6:22, I will close the public hearing. And so,
My advice would be to go ahead and have a vote on the zoning request, and then open a new public hearing for the SUP, close it, and then have the vote for the SUP.
yeah, I assume we needed to keep
Yeah.
the two separate. So any other discussions? Then I'll consider a motion.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for ZR 24-009 with staff recommendations, if they're part of this one.
I'll second.
Motion passes. So on to item 4B. So we've already done our staff. And so no additional presentation, I think, is required by, so then we'll open the public hearing. And it is 6:24. I assume no one's going to speak on this one.
No,
And
sir.
so it is 6:24. We'll close the public hearing. And we will, any discussions? So consider taking a motion to approve or deny.
I'll make a motion to approve SUP 24-005.
I'll second.
Got a second? Motion passes. Item 4C.
This is an application for a specific use permit to allow for a new 100-foot telecommunication tower in the agriculture zoned district, case SUP 24-001.
All right. Good evening. Ryan Wells, Director of Planning Development Services. I'll be giving the staff presentation on the Verizon Passport Telecom Tower, specific use permit request, project ID SUP 24001. Here's a visual, an aerial of the location. To the south of this property is Wood Creek 5C. To the west is Ben Payne Road and Montera Phase 1. You can see the amenity center just kind of to the southwest of the subject property, which is located on North Ben Payne Road. It's a single lot. It's a platted lot, actually, which has an existing single-family residence with an accessory structure, its own agriculture, and again, located on North Ben Payne Road, approximately 245 feet east of Ben Payne Road, which is kind of confusing. We're going to fix that at some point, but Ben Payne Road goes north and also veers off to the east. So this is a specific use permit request to authorize the installation of a 96-foot monopole telecommunication tower with a 4-foot lightning rod on top of it in the agricultural zone. Fate Unified Development Ordinance Table 4.1-1 requires a specific use permit in the agricultural zone and in any zone really for this use. So again, with the lightning rod, this is ultimately a 100-foot monopole structure. It's been located within a 50 by 50-foot lease area, and the intent is for it to be accessed via a gravel access drive with an entrance off the southern end of the property from Ben Payne Road. As you can see in the packet and the exhibits, the monopole is shown within basically the center of the property. We actually worked with the applicant and their representatives for a good long while because we have very strict standards on the setback requirements for monopoles from residential zones. And they had to find just the right spot and the right height of the monopole to meet a 3-to-1 setback, which is our requirement in the code for monopoles from residential zoning districts. But they found it with, working with us for quite some time. And they're showing a proposed 6-foot high chain link fence with barbed wire within that lease area. We do have higher level standards for screening and enclosures for monopoles. And so that's a recommended condition of approval that I'll present to you later. There are some supplemental criteria in Article 4 of the UDO that talk about monopoles and towers and telecommunications facilities in general. It requires a platted lot. And again, I mentioned earlier it's already a platted lot. It requires accommodation for at least 2 providers if greater than 75 feet. This being a 96-foot facility, there would need to be allowance for an additional co-located provider on the facility. Generally, the maximum height is 75 feet, but with the SUP, you can get additional height on that. And there's no lighting allowed unless required by FCC or FAA. So the criteria for this SUP, you're familiar with them now from our previous presentation, but as they apply to this project, number 1, or A, is whether it meets the purpose of the zoning district and the criteria and regulations. Again, the property has never been zoned, so it defaults to the agricultural zoning standards. And, you could really say towers, like a telecommunications facility, doesn't really meet the intent of the agricultural zone, but that's often where you find them. But there are some mitigating factors that make this appropriate. Again, it's the default status, so that's really, what's already there. It meets the service needs for surrounding rural and increasingly suburban residents. There's no facilities in the local area, so this would provide some coverage for the developing neighborhoods as well as the more rural residents in the immediate vicinity. And again, we have some conditions of approval we're recommending to mitigate some of the other concerns. So that we feel that one's checked. Item B is whether it complements or is compatible with surrounding uses. Again, it provides communication facilities in an existing low service area. The figure here is actually from the applicant, kind of showing what a 100-foot monopole could provide coverage in and the levels of quality of coverage from that location. And again, with Wood Creek developing in the area, Montero developing in the area, it will provide coverage for actually a pretty decent number of residents. And again, we want to reduce impact through those conditions of approval. Item C is whether it adequately mitigates traffic impacts. As we've learned from other applicants of this similar type, this is really a very low impact type of use. There's going to maybe be a couple visits a year for maintenance or just checking things out. But once it's in, once the construction's done, it's a very, very passive use. So there's little traffic impact and very periodic access to the site. So that criterion is met. Item D is whether it contributes to, enhances, or promotes the quality of life for residents. Again, this provides communication facilities in a low-service area. We're all very reliant on cell service, and so multiple rural and suburban residents will benefit from the additional coverage. And again, conditions of approval are intended to provide mitigation from the anticipated impacts. Criterion E is whether the project is in scale with the existing neighborhood or will be considered to be in scale. Again, a 100-foot tall pole in the middle of open agricultural area isn't necessarily in scale, but the FCC requires municipalities to accommodate these facilities. We can't just say no to them. And I don't say necessarily think we'd want to say no to them. It has to be located in the right place. And so with conditions of approval, we feel like this will be as much in scale as it can be, given its nature within the area. Item F is that their ability to mitigate any adverse impacts due to access, parking, et cetera. Again, there's minimal, if any, traffic generated from the site once it's constructed. There's occasional maintenance. So we don't really think there are going to be really any impacts from this use. So we did send out a public notice, both in the newspaper as well as to all property owners within 200 feet, and this map shows where those notices went. We had 15 notices sent total. We received 0 responses as of this morning and nothing since then. So that was, it's a pretty unexciting use, so we don't generally get too many comments on that. As far as fiscal analysis goes, because this is such a passive use with a very limited impact, we chose not to conduct a fiscal analysis for this specific use. There wasn't going to be really any change on either side. And so we have the discretion to bypass that step if we feel it's necessary. So with all of that, staff is recommending approval of the SUP with some conditions, and they are as follows. The recommended conditions for the specific use permit are: number 1, prior to acceptance of any structural permits, a type 1 site plan application shall be submitted and approved by the city. That's an administrative level review, so they would submit the site plan to us. Staff would review it, ultimately approve it if it meets all the standards. Number 2, security fencing shall be an evergreen hedge with a wrought iron with masonry columns or a masonry wall. We don't allow chain link with barbed wire. I know that's an easier treatment, but we have consistently required, as is required in the code, this more robust screening treatment. The exterior of equipment buildings and metal equipment cabinets visible from residential areas or public rights-of-way must have a neutral finish and be painted to reflect the color and character of adjoining structures or blend with adjacent landscaping. Condition 3 would be that no signals, lights, or illumination of any kind shall be permitted on or directed toward any tower unless required by the FCC, FAA, or other appropriate public authority. 4 is that the city would initiate the removal of the SUP if the applicant no longer operates the uses presented. We do have standards in the code for dismantling and decommissioning of towers, but this also would expire the SUP that authorizes the tower in the first place. Again, that could be way down in the future, but we always like to have this on the books so that things don't just linger on if circumstances change. Condition 5 is that prior to issuance of any building permit, the owner shall provide a written and notarized certification to the city that the tower is available for use by other telecommunication service providers. Again, that co-location requirement that's in the code, because it's 100 feet, they would need to be able to provide access for one other user as a co-locator on that tower. Again, that just reduces the total number of towers we need to have in the city. It just makes sense. And finally, number 6, and I had this in italics because this wasn't actually in the report, but it's something that you should consider tonight. And this is something that we've required in other similar cases, and that would be that the driveway onto North Bend Payne Road, that gravel drive, there should be about a 30-foot apron abutting the road. That reduces the tracking of gravel onto the public roadway. It's a very simple treatment and one that, again, we've consistently required with other facilities. We just neglected to put it in the report for this one, but something for you all to consider in making your motion, that adding a concrete apron will protect the public right-of-way from tracking and damage. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is here to give their own brief presentation, but I'm happy to take questions now or later.
I got one question for you, Ryan. Can you pull back up the map of the satellite view of where this is? It was closer to the beginning. I mean, that one could work. It might. So we know we have to the west, we're looking at Montera, to the, oh, wait. I'm orienting, yeah. To the west, we're looking at Montera. To the south, we're really looking at, south and east, we're looking at Wood Creek, right? What is the zoning behind it to the north currently? Do you know what that's zoned right now, or is that all agriculture?
All that around there is agriculture, I believe. Is the property to the north part of Montera?
Directly to the north of Montera.
Yeah.
Is ag.
Yeah, that's right. So the large lot to the east is agriculture. The neighboring properties to the west are agriculture. To the south is residential as part of Wood Creek. The lot to the north is like 12106, I think. That's actually part of Montera Phase 4. And so that's a residentially zoned property. So that's why it was so difficult for them to find just the right location for the tower.
And that's what you meant by the setback had to be far enough. Okay, I just wanted to make sure like
Yeah.
that we're not going to have an issue where if that's already zoned neighborhood.
Right, so that
And
was
that's what
already
you meant
zoned
by
when they made their application. Now, if somebody comes in and rezones, say, the large lot to the east, that's not gonna affect,
Yeah.
because they're first in time, first in right, they're already
Absolutely.
there. But, the existing zoning was a little bit of a constraint for them, but, thankfully, they were able to kind of, fit it just right in where they needed to.
Perfect, that was my only question, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm just curious. I know we've had these come before us. Do we have others this size, or would this be the tallest one, or?
This would actually be a shorter one.
Okay.
We've seen ones that are about 110, maybe, how tall was the one over on 66? That was the tallest one, I think. Yeah, so this was a little shorter, again, because you couldn't have a taller tower and meet that 3-to-1 setback. So, of course, it does affect the coverage, but that's, again, the standard that we have. Yeah.
Their max height is 110, so they can't go much higher.
Yeah. And again, we also have spacing requirements, so you can't have one tower too close to another one, so, yeah.
Just curious here, why not make the whole entire driveway concrete versus just the 30 feet?
Sure. Well, it's just, that's a matter of scale and proportionality. I mean, it's such a passive use with such a low traffic. I mean, if it were a road to serve a barn or any other type of use on this agriculturally zoned property, we wouldn't require them to, build a concrete. And that's just a really expensive and high level of treatment. So we've found that the apron is enough to kind of reduce the tracking impact, which is really all we would really expect if you have somebody coming out in a regular sized pickup truck, a couple times a year to check things out. And the distance is pretty far too. That would probably be a deal killer if we made them have to put a whole concrete drive all the way up there.
But all of that's visible, right? It's most of that road is going to be visible to whoever drives to whatever neighborhoods back there in Montera or whatever. However that road forks out there.
So part of it's an existing gravel road that they would be
Yeah.
using. But yes, it would be visible. And now, again, all these are agriculturally zoned properties, so most likely any existing roadways and driveways are gravel. And so this is a little bit of an enhancement, but we're just trying to find that balance of protecting the public right-of-way, but and not being too heavy-handed with some of our treatment standards.
Sure, sounds good, thanks.
How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
Doing all right.
All right. Well, good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you all for having me. My name is Michael Karanja. I'm here on behalf of Verizon Wireless and MD7. Thank you very much, Ryan, for your presentation. Made my job a lot simpler. A lot of what I'm going to be doing is a little bit extra. And any questions at the end, of course. So the first thing that I'll bring up is the public safety of the project. This is a priority for both MD7 and Verizon. And on this site, Verizon will be implementing something called Frontline. Frontline is a high-speed broadband service that is designed to most benefit first responders in the area. And so given the breadth of the coverage of this site, we know that the nearest fire department is 1.8 miles away from the site itself, which falls well within the coverage that this site would provide. So the goal of this frontline coverage would be to assist in the connectivity of both anyone passing within the zone that the tower is covering, as well as any first responders who are already in that area, including that fire department itself. This is something that they've seen great success with over time since implementing, and something that they're greatly hoping will help in these emergency situations. So again, Ryan really explained a whole lot of this. We've just got some visuals that are going to be very similar to what you saw, and some simulations showing what the site itself may look like. This is another overhead view of where the site itself is. And then we've got some before and after shots of photo simulations of what that may be. So this is the view from that angle, and then we've got the after with that tower simulated in. So just a little back and forth there for the before and after, and then we have the same visual from a different angle just to show what that may be. Just for the before and after there. And then just to, again, reiterate what Ryan was saying about the coverage of that site. That dot there is where the site is proposed to be. Those 3 dots that we have are the nearest sites. And so you see the propagation there, red being the strongest in the center of that coverage. And what we're looking to do is bridge the service provided by those towers, because there is that gap in coverage that you can see in that zone where there's no red, and it's just to the outside of the coverage already provided by those nearby sites. So this is the coverage provided by the site, just a zoomed in photo of, again, the same thing that we saw earlier, just showing what coverage would be provided. And that's all I've got for you this evening. If there's any photos, visuals you want me to go back, also any questions y'all may have for me. Thank you.
All right, so I have one question for Ryan, but I'll let everyone else go prior to me asking mine. Any other questions for Ryan or the staff? So this is the first time I've seen one of these come through that's being placed on a residential property. Before it's been on, or at least that I've been aware of, it wasn't a residential property, but more of a in a commercial area.
If I can clarify, the last 2 SUPs that we've approved for telecom towers have been large lot residential users. On State Highway 66, just north of us here, and then on North King Road, just across from the high school property. They're large lots, but they all have residences on them and generally have an agricultural component to the properties.
Okay, so then, as you mentioned that, I go, yeah, that's right, because it was out this way. What did I think that that lot was kind of divided, you know, kind of, I know essentially it's kind of, I guess, they deeded access to it, but I just wonder, because how many acres overall is that site itself? And I guess that site would always remain ag?
Possibly, possibly not. The parcel itself is about 5.3 acres in size.
Okay.
So agricultural zoning has a 5-acre minimum lot size, so you couldn't subdivide it or do anything with that beyond kind of its existing condition. Now, in the future, could it be rezoned? Possibly. To be honest, I don't know if the presence of that monopole is going to have a direct impact on the ability to rezone it, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right now, given its zoning, it's kind of as compact as it's going to be.
Yeah, which, I don't have any indigestion over it. It was just asking for
Of course.
my education.
Sure.
All right, thank you. So if we have no other questions, then I'll consider taking a motion.
I believe we did it.
Oh, public hearing. I don't want to do the public hearing. Don't, no, you're going to make me because it's the thing I'm supposed to do. Okay, so it is 6:45. We'll open the public hearing.
Have no one that signed up to speak.
All right, so at 6:45, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, now, anybody else have any other questions? Now I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve SUP-24-001 with staff conditions.
Did we want to adding the concrete apron? Do we need to call that out as well, or is
I
staff?
think you would, because that is not mentioned in the staff report, so adding the proposed condition 6 with the concrete apron would need to be specified in the motion.
Do I make a motion to amend my motion, or can I just say it again? Okay. I would like to restate, I would like to make a motion to approve SUP 24-001 with staff recommendations and also including a 30-foot concrete apron be added to those recommendations.
I'll second that.
We got a second? All right, motion passes. Thank you. And item number 5.
Item number 5, Director of Planning and Development Services report announcements pertaining to city activities, upcoming events, future legislative activities, and other matters related thereto.
All right, I don't have much tonight. Thank you all for your work tonight and throughout the year. I wanted to let you know that in February, there will be a one-day training called Focus North Texas. That is going to be a land use and planning training opportunity for both professional planners as well as appointed and elective officials. I will give you all more details, but again, this is going to be something that we're going to invite you to participate in. The city, our department actually will cover the cost of registration and give you all the details on that. So in our meeting in December, I'll have dates and more details about that event. I'm actually supporting the coordinating committee for the event this year, so I'll be able to have the inside scoop. That's about it for my announcements, but I also want to just wish all of you a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we in the planning department so appreciate you, how thoughtful you are, how much you care about this community, the great questions, and the way you keep us on our toes. It's great. It really makes this a wonderful challenge and a great dynamic between the department and the appointed officials. So thanks, everyone, and hope you enjoy your holiday.
Oh, thank you. That was very nice. Anybody, I'll start on this end. Any closing, Karen? No? All right. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion passes. Good night all and happy Thanksgiving.